Good evening and welcome. Welcome again for those of you who are in our little pre-show vamp performance there. I'd like to welcome you to the Sinister Wisdom reading celebrating the launch of Sinister Wisdom 122 writing communities. Thank you to Carol Kramer and your girlfriend for that opening snippet of song that we hear, Peace and Harmony. We're putting more information about the song into the chat right now. I'm Julie Enzer. I'm really happy to have you at our reading this evening. And before we begin, I want to spend a few moments for a land acknowledgement. We are all around the United States and all around the world, and many of us are living on occupied, unceded land. I am in what is now Dover, Florida, the traditional homelands and territories of the Seminole, as well as other historical groups, including the Calusa and the Tocobaga. I invite other people to name the land that they are on, where they're joining us for this evening's event. We pause to recognize the histories of war and colonization and to imagine and work for a world where we all have a fair and equitable distribution of resources. Now, we have a chakra block hour planned for you. We're going to wrap up around 8 o'clock on the East Coast, or in 60 minutes from wherever whatever time it's beginning for you right now, including time at the end for our traditional dance number. If you're not familiar with Sinister Wisdom, welcome. We're so glad to have you with us this evening. Sinister Wisdom is a quarterly journal of lesbian literature and art. If you're not currently a subscriber, I encourage you to subscribe, and I encourage everyone to mute themselves as well. And you can subscribe by going to sinisterwisdom.org/subscribe online. In addition, a group of monthly sustainers are vital to Sinister Wisdom. If you are able and would like to give $3, $5, or maybe $100 a month to support Sinister Wisdom, you can sign up as a sustainer at www.sinisterwisdom.org/sustainers. I send out emails every month when your gift comes in with behind the scenes details and new information about what we have coming for the journal. At this time, I want to appreciate the many, many ways lesbians lift up and support the work of Sinister Wisdom. We'll be launching our fall fundraising campaign on November 1st of this year. We have some great stuff that I'll be sharing both in the mail and online for people who are part of our online list as well. I hope that if you believe in and support, if you believe in the work that we're doing, that you'll support us by making a donation to the organization this fall. It really means a lot. So a couple quick housekeeping things before I begin the program, and two of my props I don't have right next to me. So sorry for that quick motion. But first of all, do keep your microphones muted throughout the program. If we see noise from your microphone, we will mute you. There will be opportunity at the end for people to unmute and make all their video live and wave and celebrate during the end of our program when we do our dance. As the program proceeds, if you want to show appreciation for readers, you can wave your hands at the end of each reading and also use the reaction emojis on Zoom, which I am demonstrating right now. You can go ahead and test that if you like. I also encourage everyone to put information into the chat, particularly when you're hearing readings that you love. Readers love to come and look at the chat after they finish their reading and know what resonated with our audience. If you need technical assistance, you might have already learned that Max Bacher is on tap for technical assistance this evening. So you can directly chat with Max. And Max, I see that Doris doesn't have sound. Doris, you can't hear this because you don't have sound, but we're so glad you're here with us. And hopefully Max is going to chat with you and work it out, because I want you to hear the great program we have this evening. As you all know, we are recording the event I'll make it available tomorrow, or probably more likely on Thursday, at sinisterwisdom.org/SW122. Finally, the issue that we're celebrating tonight is both in the mail to all subscribers, and I'm hearing from people that they have received it, which I'm thrilled about. As many of you know, we have struggled with the USPS over the past year, but I am outsmarting the USPS and mailing earlier than ever to get books out by our launch dates and our deadlines. We love seeing sightings of the journal, so take a picture of yourself with the journal, post it on social media, email it to me, we'll post it on social media. And if you do not receive your copy and you're a subscriber, if the copy's not in your hands by November 15th, just send me an email and we will get you a replacement copy. I do have a few extra copies of the journal on hand, and you can purchase individual copies again at sinisterwisdom.org/SW122. Meanwhile, if you're waiting for the issue and the postal carrier is not giving you the love you deserve, might I encourage you to order the Sinister Wisdom 2022 calendar, which we send out priority mail because the post office does not regard it as bound reading material. And so as priority mail, it arrives within 3 to 5 days from when I mail it out to you. It's a fantastic calendar. There is brand new lesbian art for each month of the year and notes on the dates of significant lesbian and queer history. A student intern did it over the summer and it's really fabulous. I'm excited to be sharing it with everyone. That's the end of my public service announcements for us all this evening. And so now I'm going to move into introducing our program. Sinister Wisdom 122 is an incredibly wonderful and special issue of the journal. In addition to lots of amazing new writing by lesbians, there's a special section curated by Stephanie Andrea Allen and Cherelle on writing communities. And that is the work that we are highlighting this evening. There everyone sees Stephanie. And do we have Lauren?
Yes, I'm here. Hello.
Yes. Hello, Lauren. We're gonna pin your video too. So I want to thank, first I'm going to tell you a little bit about Stephanie and Lauren, who curated the work in writing communities. And I'll begin by briefly introducing them. Stephanie Andrea Allen is a Black lesbian writer, Southerner, scholar, and educator. She's currently a visiting assistant professor in gender, she's now no longer visiting. We're thrilled. She is currently an assistant professor of gender studies at Indiana University, and she is the publisher and editor-in-chief at BLF Press and co-founder of the Black Lesbian Literary Collective. Lauren, have we met? I don't think I've ever seen your face before. It's so lovely. Thank you so much. We've only talked on email. I love these moments. Lauren is a graphic designer, fiction editor, and former indie writer publisher who helps transform dreams into realities for women of color writers. Lauren and Stephanie worked long and hard on this issue. I'm so thrilled with the work that they have put together. And I want to ask everyone to say hello and thank Lauren and Stephanie for their work and their contribution to our community, which we will celebrate through the readings tonight. Thank you both. So our first reader is a Black lesbian writer of poetry and speculative fiction. Her debut collection, Lauren disappeared as fast as she appeared. It's amazing. But I'm sorry, I'm back. Our first reader is a Black lesbian writer of poetry and speculative fiction. Her debut collection, Two Moon Stories, was released from BLF Press in 2018 and was a 2019 Lambda Literary Award finalist. I'm thrilled to welcome this evening our first reader, Krystal A. Smith. Krystal, please read.
Hello, good evening, everybody. I'm so glad you're all here. I'm going to read. I'm going to read 3 poems tonight from this issue, and I'll just get into it. Collective, my collective. We dreamed a dream together in pieces, something to build and grow, to hold, to give to each other. A wide open space within us for us to harvest the bright future. We need each other. This love, individual passion, we are the collective. We are the dream of our ancestors, steadily moving forward. Not now. We became so comfortable, it became uncomfortable to say, not now. The pressure to confide boiled and bubbled like caramel cooking in a pot. We could not stir it. We could not touch it. We had no energy for it, no rights to it. No knowledge in our collective histories could make us burn slower, ache less. We became so uncomfortable, the only comfort was to look away. Not now. Please, not now. And a final piece for you tonight, buoyancy. I wake up, my limbs are easy in their mobility, like I've been put back in the gentle amniotic fluid of yes. I am viscous matter. I am buoyant, like my dreams floating along the current, searches for the first, last, the only way to say I love you. I love you feels like crepe paper on my tongue. It sticks there, a little sweet, begging me to swallow, to take in its fullness, its weightlessness. Stay with me? Here in the afterbirth of our confessions, join me. Hold my limbs accountable against your mind. Hold me easy, gently hold me down. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Krystal. That was lovely. As you'll see in the chat, the lines that were really resonating with people, and I could tell looking at all the faces that people were just riveted by your reading. Thank you so much. Our next reader is the author of SBF Seeking and Cairo, The Sweet Taste of Sisterhood. Her short fiction can be found in several anthologies. I'm thrilled to welcome next to our stage, LaToya Hankins. LaToya.
Happy Tuesday, everyone. It is always an honor to be in the company of my sisters, and I'm so happy to follow behind my literary role model, Krystal Smith. I'll be reading for my nonfiction selection called Women Word Warriors. I knew I was a writer. After all, I earned a degree in journalism from one of the top colleges in North Carolina. My background included working as a newspaper reporter for 5.5 years and as a feature editor for 18 months. My publishing history includes 2 books, 3 short stories, and contributions to 2 anthologies. Nouns, verbs, metaphors, similes, and the like dance under my fingers onto pages. I've spoken on college campuses and interviewed with magazines, podcasts, and LGBT pride literary panels about my work. Then I became a part of the Black lesbian literary collective BLLC. At that point, I realized I had simply been putting words down on a page rather than being a writer. Through fellowship with phenomenal writing talent in an affirming environment, I was inspired to push myself beyond the limits of how I previously defined my work and my ability to call myself a writer. The BLLC's mission is to create a nurturing and sustainable environment for Black, lesbian, and queer women of color writers. The founders and members strive to increase lesbian visibility in literary independent publishing spheres, promote ethical publishing practices through education and rigorous standards, and live their best writing lives. The group, founded by 2 Black lesbian publishers located in different states, serves as a prime example of the power of writing collectives to craft lesbian literary history. BLLC's creation could be seen as continuing the work began during the 1970s by Black lesbian authors Pat Parker, Audre Lorde, and Barbara Smith. Along with others in the movement, Parker, Lorde, and Smith galvanized and encouraged Black lesbians to use their writing talents to fight homophobia, sexism, and racism by providing venues and safe spaces to have work critiqued and published. My introduction to the BLLC was through participating in 2 BLLC podcasts. The web-based interview program invites Black, lesbian, and queer women of color authors to discuss their work. The exposure it offers is rare and a welcome gift, as Black lesbian literature often does not have a chance to shine or reach large audiences. After my participation, I remained engaged with the work the BLLC was doing to promote lesbian literature. When the opportunity presented itself to become part of an inaugural writing workshop, I decided to participate. During the BLLC workshops, I felt my creativity was enhanced by being a company of writers who create in ways totally different from me. Our cohort included a writer who crafted a fantastic story about deaf's helper seeking reunification with a lover in exchange for their service. Another who detailed life in inner city Boston during the 1990s, and a third whose bilingual stories were as lush as a mango enjoyed on a sunny Saturday. Perhaps it was because our meetings were held on Sunday that workshops felt like a communion of kindred spirits. After completing that workshop, I continued my involvement with BLLC. I attended a second web-based workshop as well as a weekend-long writers workshop. I've also participated in panels with BLLC organizers and fellow members. Prior to joining the BLLC, I challenged myself to define myself, let someone else do it for me. Now I can say that through my involvement, I'm a woman word warrior, seeking to write the reality of being a Southern Black lesbian. The support I received from being part of this lesbian writing collective makes it possible for me to define who I am as a writer in a much more meaningful way. And for that, I say, Stephanie and Lauren, thank you.
Thank you so much, LaToya. One of my favorite things is it shows how multifaceted and important the work of Stephanie and Lauren is. So thank you. Thank you for your wonderful contribution. Thank you for the BLLC. We did put the link into the chat for people looking to learn more about the work. So our next reader is a Cave Canem Fellow, Sarah Lawrence College alum, MFA graduate from the University of Massachusetts at Amherst, and the author of poetry chapbooks, full-length collections, and I think I had the forthcoming memoir, but it's now out, Who's Your Daddy? And you see the cover art right behind the reader. Our next reader is Arisa White. We are thrilled to have you reading with us today. Please welcome Arisa. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And thank you so much, Stephanie and Lauren, for putting this together. So I'm going to read excerpts from the piece that is published in this issue. It's called Rule Maker. Dear Amira Shanice, creator, writer, director of the web series New York Girls. I happened upon your show after finishing my day as an advisor at Goddard College. I like to quiet my brain with a movie. So before the YouTube algorithm brought NYG TV to my attention, I watched the Dorothy Dandridge movie with Halle Berry, Deep in My Heart with Len Whitfield, and a Lifetime movie with 90s R&B singer Monica. I don't know how your web series was suggested to me based on those previous selections. Not knowing what to expect since the image was a thumbnail on my Samsung, an image of Ty, and because that queerness, that particular way of being AG, reminded me of senior year of high school of Peaches, I hit play. I was hooked. I couldn't believe what I was seeing. Young Black women in an intentional romantic relationship set in what appeared to be an NYC public housing apartment, because those walls looked like my walls growing up. When I noticed that there were seasons, I knew this was commitment. These characters would be given an opportunity to evolve. There was Stacy, Maya, Cameron, Alex, AJ, Sammy, Peyton, and Jessica, and I wanted to know their lives and could therefore accept stifled dialogue at times, the loss of audio, because this circle of gender nonconforming friends was enough of a story to make me love its flaws. Amira, I am grateful. I realized I got used to not seeing aspects of my life reflected, and if so, those depictions were power, hungry, unlikability, or women intent on baby making, or at the root of this queerness is whiteness. This is the slow erasure of experience I consent to endure when I sit down to be entertained by movies, drama series, and as my cousin would say, my stories. Because the stories we tell are the futures we make, and I have been traveling back in time, doing archival work in the poetry archives at San Francisco State. For a couple of months now, I've watched videos of poets like Audre Lorde, Pat Parker, and Cheryl Clark, all of whom publicly identified as lesbian. Is lesbian outdated? Is their community connected to lesbian? I'm cool identifying with the acronym LGBTQI more so than lesbian for that sense of collectivism. However, in an email exchange with Cheryl Clark, she pointed out the importance of enunciating the identity lesbian a little more in our refusal to allow lesbians to be erased from history and literature. So what stories are we imagining for the future of the Black lesbian? Tracking how the New York girls identify themselves. So far, we have AG, studs, femme, bitches, my nigga, which is said so much that I began to read and see it as the feminine conjugation for nigger. Females, dyke, gay, transgender, and the first time lesbian was mentioned 8 shows into the first season was when Danny, the white-skinned basketball player, hands over a $25,000 check to her sister to give to her mother and says, "Your lesbian sister isn't doing too bad, huh?" Putting these terms out there makes vocabulary to build from, as well as model the possibilities of sexuality and desire. We need that to move the language along, to inspire how we are imagined, to fuel the act of bringing it into form, the life and body of living by your calling. When I watched the L Word, I related to Jennifer Beals' character. In Maya, I relate to even more. She's feminine and aggressive. She resists categorization, and that point of view draws me in as a viewer. At a recent reading with Sarah Schulman, an audience member asked a question about why we don't see more lesbian protagonists in literary fiction. Schulman's response was great, and this comment stayed with me. Women who want something are not likable. Maya has wants for her career, for her heart, for her pussy, and for her people. I told friends to watch your web series. My wife became irritated with me reporting on all the goings on of the show. When Maya got kidnapped, I wanted to know why Stacy was not showing more gravitas. It then solidified in my mind that high heels make you vulnerable, and Maya should have choked the driver kidnapper with the strap of her purse and caused a car crash to draw attention. Then I considered, how long does a Black woman have to go missing before we take notice? The drama and grit of these women's lives are happening within the cultural conversations of our times. We see the Black Lives movement against and alongside these lesbian bodies. Sandra Bland's death becomes reframed. Blackness and its criminalization is disruptive, and Black female masculinity is even more so. She disturbs all our expectations of woman and man and the performance of proper behavior. When Ty is harassed by a police officer in her neighborhood because they suspect she is male and up to no good, the police officer's behavior intensifies when he finds out she is female. He finds a strap-on in her backpack, waves it in her face, asking, "What do you need this for?" Ty refuses silence and says, "To fuck your mother later." Resisting arrest becomes the refusal to be on the bottom, an erotic play of power, one body asserting itself over the other, insisting on its right to be here. New York girls offer a rarely encountered gradation of the spectrum. Even though there are those popularized images of Blackness and womanhood, project living, drug dealers, single mothers, that ghetto-ness of living beyond one means, and hypersexuality, it is in coexistence rather than singularity, viewed through a queer experience. The picture gets more whole, and that's how I feel when I watch New York girls, more whole. Thank you.
Thank you, Arisa. That's always the problem. I'll confess to folks, I tried to get Stephanie or Lauren to be the moderator, because stepping up after a reading like that and some of the other erotic readings that I know folks are delivering tonight is always a challenge. So thank you, Arisa. I pause at this moment with a brief advertisement for 2 events that Sinister Wisdom has coming up. First, thanks to the work of Stephanie and Lauren and BLF Press for this wonderful collection of short stories, God's Will and Other Lies by Penny Mickleberry. It's the subject of our 2nd book club of the season. We are meeting on Tuesday, November 9th at 7 p.m. at another Zoom link to talk about these incredible stories. And I invite everyone to join us and read the book in advance, or don't read the book in advance and just come and listen into the conversation. I know that we will have great conversations about Penny Mickleberry's God's Will and Other Lies. I encourage you, you can order it from wherever you want. You do not need to own the book to come to the book club. You can borrow it from your library. If you are going to buy it, I do encourage you to order it directly from BLF Press, which is something that I was going to put into the links, and maybe I'll try and get that link together, because then the press has more money to publish more amazing works. So that's in 2 weeks on November 9th, 2 or 3 weeks. And then a week after that, on Tuesday, November 16th at 7 p.m., we'll be talking in another Zoom room with Claire Koss about her wonderful profile of Frances Clayton, also in Sinister Wisdom 122. For those of you who are not familiar with Frances Clayton, she was a trailblazing mid-century lesbian who was Audre Lorde's partner for about 20 years. Claire interviewed her prior to her death and has put together the interviews into the text that we published in Sinister Wisdom, along with a few images that give us a biographical sketch of Frances Clayton. And in addition to Claire joining us and talking about Frances and this piece, she will also be joined by Audre and Frances's daughter, Elizabeth Lord Rollins, and Sinister Wisdom's own Cheryl Clark, to talk about more about the life of Frances Clayton. So I encourage you to join us for both events. I think they're going to be really special evenings, just like this evening. So now we're going back to our program, and I'm ready to invite our next reader. Our next reader is a Black, queer, and poverty-born counter-storyteller. Her writings appear in Guernica, The Rumpus, Zora, The Feminist Wire, Roxane Gay's media platform Gay Mag, and more. Please join me in welcoming Nicole Shawan Junior. Nicole.
Thank you so much for having me. And I want to send mad love and gratitude to both Stephanie and Lauren for just continued generosity, and love for us Black, queer, lesbian, femmes, all that. And Arisa, that was dope, yo. So thank you for sharing that. All right, y'all, this is called This See This For You. It's from issue 122 in Sinister Wisdom. Back in 1980s Brooklyn, I thought writing was something for wealthy white people with too much time on their hands. It was then, when I was in early girlhood, I learned that I was to make a living for myself while nursing a baby and husband, like Mama, who was a legal secretary caring for me and crack-addicted daddy, Miss Huxtable, who lawyered while schooling 5 kids and cleaning up after Cliff's mess, and Raj and Dee's mama, who was a maid and worked relentlessly to get Raj, Rerun, and Dwayne out of all those jams. But being a writer wasn't a thing to aspire to, not for us poverty-born Black girls. Being a writer, it seemed, was a thing only for Jessica Fletcher and other phantom white folk from whom I was worlds apart. Each day when the dismissal bell sounded and I jumped into the single file classroom line, Mrs. Powell marched my 3rd grade class toward the school's exit. Outside of Brooklyn Public School 139, kids bounced about, played tag, and tossed balls, eluding parents for end of school fun. I bypassed them all, following Mama's before school orders to head straight to the library and wait for your father to pick you up. The library was around the corner from the schoolyard. It was my favorite place to be. Once there, I hunted out the day's treasure, a book by Stein, Martin, or Stratemeyer. I'd plop onto a plastic yellow chair and perch my book stack on a corner table. Page after page pulled me deeper into imagination, but page after page also let me down. While I loved the adventures that Goosebumps, the Babysitter's Club, and the Hardy Boys presented, those books and all the others I pulled from the library shelves didn't reflect the crack epidemic that flamed around me. They didn't conjure my community, our faces, our slangs, our blocks. In their pages, I didn't see myself. Why are you here? I asked. A month after Zadie Smith's Feel Free landed in bookstores, I hosted the first session of my penning my pieces, How to Piece Together a Puzzle of My Life Creative Nonfiction Writing Workshop. I scanned the participating storytellers who sat around the table. They averted their eyes and looked around for someone else to answer my call. But for Thelonious Monk's Round Midnight, you could have heard crickets. Finally, one hand skirted the air. It was Dee, a 30-something-year-old Boricua who'd taken 2 Roots Wounds Words workshops with me before. Dee was a queer poet, housing activist, and single mother who'd recently secured her own apartment after living in New York City's shelter system with her kids for more than 5 years. I gestured for her to speak. Well, hey everyone. She cleared her throat and adjusted her baseball cap to reveal her eyes. I've taken workshops with Nicole before, and in the last workshop, I was able to write about something that happened to me years ago that I couldn't even talk about, let alone write about. I didn't finish it though, so I came back hoping to get it done. C, a wicker brown woman wearing a tailored jumpsuit, raised her hand. I've been wanting to write for a long time about my mother, C confessed. You know, my mother was a really stern and proud Haitian woman. Tough love was the only love she gave. I now have 2 boys of my own, but haven't dealt with the pain my mother caused me. I've never taken a writing workshop before, but I really want to write about the trauma I experienced from my mother. The sage burned as I repositioned myself in the room. A Dominican woman, R, with great purple hair and a septum ring, raised her hand. I nodded, gesturing to her that she should feel free to speak. I'm here because of your flyer and the images that were on it. I knew I wouldn't have to deal with white people here. She laughed, as did the rest of us. I've taken writing workshops before where there weren't many people of color, or I was the only one. I felt like I had to defend my writing. I wanted to be around other writers of color who understood my stories. I thought I'd find that here. I'm here because I wanted to be affirmed. I struggle with whether or not to call myself a writer when I'm sure others will find value in what I have to say, said O, a woman with Senegalese twists. One by one, all of the storytellers expressed their reasons for taking my writing workshop. Some came because they'd been lifelong writers and wanted to dig deeper into craft. Others wanted to dig deeper into the roots of their trauma. but most came for the affirmation that they did not find on the page, the affirmation that declared they were writers, despite long-standing erasure from literary canon. As a child, I poured stories onto the pages of flimsy notebooks, leaving my right ring finger calloused. In my bedroom, with our family tabby cat Twilight napping at my knees, I wrote stories of mischievous African princesses who conspired with ancient trees, crime-solving juvenile cousins who prowled shadowy Brooklyn blocks, mothers fleeing the fiery South with babies wrapped tight to their bosoms by threadbare rags. So in 1998, when I finally made it onto Smith College's campus as a first-year student, I asked my advisor what majors are the best for someone considering law. Emily Bernard was a spectacled woman with the skin the color of iced tea. She was only the second Black woman professor I came across during my first 2 weeks at Smith. Neither of my parents graduated from college, and no one in my family went to law school. At a time before Google, Professor Bernard was my only resource for learning how to navigate college courses as I strategized my way to making a living, becoming a lawyer. Many students interested in law take up English literature, she said. That news was a godsend. An English literature major would not only look good on my law school applications, but it would also feed my hunger for reading and writing, I thought. On the first day of classes, I entered a quaint brick building, hustled through the carpeted halls, and entered a room darkened by ornate curtains. The first class of English Literature 101, a prerequisite for the major, punched with the truth I'd already known. Like Smith's campus, its ivy-wrapped houses, and all the stories I read in the library after Miss Powell dismissed my third grade class, English Lit 101 was jam-packed with white folks. Of the 20 or so students and the professor, I was the only Black woman in the room. The professor, a middle-aged white man who kept a palm-wide Altoids canister on the wooden table next to his notes, told us about the influential works we'd read. Perhaps the syllabus revealed names like Chaucer, Shakespeare, and Austen, or Hemingway, Faulkner, and Hawthorne. What's for sure is that he beamed with pride, delighted by the narrowness of his literary imagination, impressed with his love for the white written word. In his facial expressions and on his syllabus's page, an erasure of Black and brown stories occurred. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Nicole. That was wonderful. Our next reader is a text-based artist and educator living in my stomping ground down here in Florida, in Tampa, Florida. In 2014, she founded the Kitchen Table Literary Arts Center to showcase and support the work of Black women and women of color writers, and is the author of 2 novels, Let the Lover Be and A Return to Arms. Please join me in welcoming Sheree L. Greer. Sheree.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm delighted to read tonight. Just want to give a shout out to the Sinister Wisdom team, and of course, Stephanie and Lauren for just being stalwart supporters of Black lesbian literature. I'm gonna read the opening to my personal essay from the issue, The Community Garden. Is writing a book like building a garden box? In the spring of 2017, my wife and I replaced the sliding door in our kitchen with French doors. The doors arrived, packaged in the largest swath of plastic cling wrap I'd ever seen, and framed with long, pale 2x4s and various other planks of wood. The door installation went well. We didn't actually do it ourselves. We've had several DIY projects of varying levels of success since buying our home 4 years ago. And when it was finished, we donated the sliding doors to Habitat for Humanity. What was left after our pre-hung door was installed were several pine planks from the French door packaging. I dragged the wood pieces to the back of the house, uncertain about what to do with them. Throw it out? Would the garbage people even pick it up if I stacked it next to the can for pickup? Did I know anybody who needed wood? Was the wood even any good? It took a week for me to decide what to do. And when I did, the decision surprised me. A garden box. I would build a garden box. Never mind, I hadn't built anything from raw materials since 8th grade woodshop, where I batted my eyes and played intimidated girl to get someone else to cut my wood with the bandsaw. My sister had nearly lost the tip of her finger on a wood saw in her 8th grade shop class 6 years earlier than my introduction to power tools. And I still remember the horror story of blood and pain and sawdust. I still envisioned all too clearly the wiry black stitches bulging alongside her swollen purplish yellow fingertip. Anyway, regardless of who cut my wood in the 8th grade, my water pump lamp turned out wonderfully. And for extra credit, I had even attached a small bucket to the corner beneath the carved pump handle that turned the light on and off. And regardless of how long ago 8th grade did or didn't feel, as I stared down at the pile of wood in the back of my house, I felt an unexpected confidence and excitement to build a garden box. As I gathered the wood and made a list of the tools I would need, my mind traveled back to my first big, overwhelming creative project as an artist. I was 2 years out of grad school and anxiously awaiting responses to the queries I'd sent out to agents and publishers in the hopes of getting my master's thesis published or represented. I decided to self-publish a book of short stories. Fiona Zed, my writing partner then and now, encouraged me to get something out into the marketplace. I had performed a few short stories through a storytelling troupe in Chicago, and my work had been published in a few anthologies and collections already. Yet when I attended conferences, readings, and literary events, the question was always the same. Do you have a book? Where can I find your book? Is that story published? Where can I read more of your work? Fiona, who was delving into self-publishing more seriously as the wider publishing world threw a bit of a cold shoulder to Black lesbian romance and Black lesbian fiction, coached me through a few options. I published my short story collection, Once and Future Lovers, to ebook platforms by midsummer. I even put it on disc to sell at readings and other literary outings. It felt good to have something in the marketplace. And the modest sales of that inspired first step filled me with a sense of pride and accomplishment I hadn't felt since walking across the stage with my MFA in hand. By the next year, I won an Australia Lesbian Writers Fund Fellowship and bought a new laptop and my first high quality desk chair. And I paid a designer to help me take Once and Future Lovers from ebook, digital to paperback. I had put my writing together before, sneak printing at my internship, then spiral binding a mediocre thriller novel and a sad collection of poems to give to my family and friends back when I thought my writing was a hobby. But self-publishing my book felt different, probably because I was different. I wasn't a hobbyist. I was a writer. I was establishing myself as an artist. Writing, though often identified for its functionality, is also an art that demands creative thinking, wrestling with skill and function and vision. The connection between building the garden box and publishing my first book seems so obvious now. Building the garden box demanded creative thinking, required wrestling with skill and function and vision. I gathered the materials I needed: nails, hammer, tape measure, and garden mesh. I decided on a manual saw rather than a power saw. See also Peaches and her gnarled fingertip. And since I didn't own a sawhorse, I used milk crates that I may or may not have stolen in my 20s. I stared down at the wood pieces for about 20 minutes, then sketched a crude design to guide my work. I remember marveling at how quickly those wood shop lessons came back to me, how fast the understanding of geometric shapes and angles repositioned themselves in my brain. As I measured and cut the wood to form the 5 by 4 foot rectangle that would soon be my garden box, childhood memories mixed themselves among the wood shop and math lessons. I used to take things apart. I used to put things back together. As a middle child, I often played alone and would find myself hiding under the cocktail table, loosening, then tightening the legs of the table, or in the basement, deconstructing my toys just to reassemble them. I used to be my father's helper for any and every home or car project, from putting together the behemoth entertainment stand to changing the spark plugs on the family car. Smiling through memory and glancing sidelong at my sketch, I cut and stacked and hammered all afternoon. I worked alone, gleefully, the struggle to remember what I could do, and the push to create something from raw materials joyous in a way I didn't know I needed. I made a couple missteps, design flaws for which I phoned a dear friend and Black lesbian visual artist, Kaula Nuruddin, who helped me get unstuck a time or two during the construction. In the end, It all came together. With my hands on my hips and sweat running down my face, I stood and considered my project. I had done it. I built a pine garden box in the center of my backyard. It wasn't quite the same high as holding a published book in my hands, but the feeling was surprisingly close. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Sheree. That was wonderful. What a joy. So our next writer likely to this group needs no introduction, yet I will introduce her anyways. Our next reader is a writer and activist and author of the double Lambda Award-winning novel, The Gilda Stories from Firebrand Books. She is the recipient of a literature fellowship from the National Endowment for the Arts, 2 California Arts Council fellowships, and an individual artist commission from the San Francisco Arts Commission. She is currently playwright in residence at New Conservatory Theater Center. We are thrilled to have read with us tonight, Jewelle Gomez.
Hi, this is really lovely. I feel like I'm at a family reunion. So it's really lovely to be here with the readers and the attendees. And thank you all, the readers who've come before. It's been really inspiring and energizing. I want to read a couple of poems that are going to be, I think, in my forthcoming collection of poems. Thank you, Arisa, for mentioning Dorothy Dandridge. The first one is dedicated to Dorothy Dandridge, who was one of the most startlingly amazing actresses of her generation. And because she was a woman of color, they didn't know what to do with her. So the poem is called Bess, You Is My Woman Now, which is a song, part of a song from Porgy and Bess, which was one of her greatest starring roles. If I had been there, quote, is a famous lesbian lament. Could I have saved you from dying naked and alone? In my dream, I do. You are luminous, a star with magnificent gravitational pull, drawing me toward you like Newton's apple to the ground. And there I am earthbound, backstage, standing barely outside the photograph, framed so professionally. I check you that no straps are showing, hand you a powder puff just before he snaps his shot. Together, we laugh every time we open Jet magazine, well worn by our gaze. The picture says more because we know what is not there. He captured the provocative cross of your legs that have danced clad in silk and flowers and grass and leopard skin, legs that ache from hours of jetés, tap combinations, mambo, and the million miles they've traveled, outrunning Hollywood men and their mythologies about you. We share the secret of that famous photograph. You were smiling, not at the intrusion of the press, but at me, carefully cropped from the story. I am the seamstress, grateful to my grandmother, a dancer too, for giving me the gift of fine, even stitches. There's no feather, animal skin, or lace I can't make grateful to serve you. Every day I measure your small waist and marvel at the flare of your hip, perfectly made to sachet. I drape fabric across your velvet shoulders so it clings and moves toward freedom. Perspiration always gathers in the sweet water wells created by your collarbones, an oasis. I sew you into that rayon skirt, leaving room for those bronze legs to cross with the illusion of ease. The muscle of your calf is a silent tension, contrasting with your smile. Every stitch and seam declares how hard you work. Each costume is translucent with the glow of you. And we laugh together at how I use a tiny scissor at the end of each day to snip the stitches and free you from their demands. If I were there to hold you, wonder child, you would not have died alone and naked. This life is just begun. And the other piece I want to read is called Colored Lesbian Poem. I too worry about lesbians kind of disappearing as entities in our life. I need to put the word lesbian in a poem since many are eager that I don't. And the words colored and lesbian together confound them as if I'd paired up a flamingo and a bear. I'm offered umbrellas under which I can relax comfortably queer in case the word lesbian might give me sunstroke or embarrass other people of color, especially those still perched on suspicious stoops back in my old hood. Don't get me wrong, I like the word queer. It's convenient. It could mean the Castro or a restaurant in Dogpatch or an off-Broadway bar. A metrosexual who gets his nails manicured, or your former roommate who doesn't mind being mistaken for a lesbian. Queer cuts down on the growing list of letters that sit like slots in a post office, waiting for the mail to arrive and be slipped in cozy in a single idea that never changes. But of course it always does. Queer does help me remember I am not alone in my slot. We're all connected to another letter, another world, another way of being. But the slot is important too. It's the nest carefully built over years from twigs of history and the blood from wounds. It provides a place to rest and reminds me I'm not a tiny bird who steps off into the air, then crashes to the ground beneath the heels of others who don't see my feathers. And the stack of nests makes a whole. The individual ideas of who we are creates a world that piques my interest. So I hug the word lesbian tight to my dark breasts, which were big when I was young, making perfect cleavage when I needed it, but now submit to gravity. I write colored lesbian on the pillow that I put between my knees in bed at night to align my hips and keep arthritis at bay. I painted on my high femme dresses so men on the street don't mistake me for just another bird on whom they prey. I sing it out when asked the question, even if the inquiry has nothing to do with sexuality, just in case there's another colored lesbian in the room who thinks she's alone. I type it into Google search every day, then pull up the Herstory archives and legal cases and Mabel Hampton, hoping to create a critical mass so that lesbian porn doesn't always show up first. I wear it on a button when I visit old people in their active living communities, just to remind them I'll be living with them soon and some sisters are already there. I do love having choices. I could be woman identified, woman loving woman, same gender loving, or queer. Any umbrella that might keep the wrath of men from raining down on me. But more, I love writing the words, a colored lesbian is a colored lesbian is a colored lesbian, as Gertrude might have said. And saying the words taste good in my mouth, just like that other word, you know, pussy. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Jewelle Gomez. What a pleasure. And now our final reader, taking us to the end of our program, is the co-editor of the issue, Stephanie Andrea Allen. I invite Stephanie to read now. Let's see, Stephanie, I'm searching for you to highlight your video.
Good. Okay, here we go.
There you are.
Okay. So we are close to time, and I am just going to read one poem, and it is actually not in this collection. So you get a surprise tonight. Okay. Dirty, warped, and cracked. What if the lens through which you came to know yourself was dirty, warped, and cracked? Do you scrape off the sick with a scalpel or splash it with bleach, leaving soured streaks? Do you shatter the glass with the hammer of your pain or seal the cracks with salve conjured from your tears? Do you sand the warp with the tear of your torment or buff them smooth with the scour of your rage? What if the lens through which you came to know yourself was only an illusion and you could alter its image with your will, and you were cleansed in the canals of love and affection, and your heart was nourished with the promise of infinite dreams, and your wounds were sutured with the thread of hope, and your scars were soothed with shade until they ceased to exist, and you are flying among the stars. I'm done.
Thank you, Stephanie. What a pleasure to be with everyone this evening. Please, if you enjoyed tonight, you're going to love reading the issue. I'm thrilled to have published it and thrilled that you all came out to celebrate it with us tonight. Thank you to everyone who read and everyone who contributed to the issue. Particular thanks, of course, to Stephanie and Lauren for all of their work in making it happen. This video will be available tomorrow at sinisterwisdom.org/SW22, tomorrow or Thursday. We're putting that link in the chat. You can also use that link to order copies of the issue. We have announced all of the events between now and June on our website, sinisterwisdom.org/events. I say all, but there's a very special event that's coming up in December, which I'm not going to tell you about because there's a special gift headed the way to all Sinister Wisdom subscribers that you'll be receiving in the next 3 or 4 weeks in anticipation of the holidays. And that announces the special event in December. And we'll post it in our email in the month of November. For our final song, we have The L Word by songwriter Carol Kramer, performed by your girlfriend and produced by Esther Records. As you listen to the music, you're invited to stand up and dance. We will highlight videos. And when the music ends, as always, I will end the Zoom call and our time together. Thank you all for joining us. And now, Max, let the dancing begin.
Come on and say the L word. It's the only chance you got to reclaim our name and not live in shame to try to improve our lot. Come on and say the L word. It's the only chance you got to stop the lying and denying.
Irene's in the house. Hey.
Hi, Joan.
Hey. 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 That's right, justice.
Do you think it sounds like a rare disease, a perversion, a plague, a vice? All it takes is a little practice. But come on and take my advice, and everybody say lesbian. Lesbian.
Lesbian.
You can't say it, it's hard to be it. If you can't be it, they can't see it. If they can't see it, they'll deny it. If we all
Hey,
deny it,
Rose.
we're in the closet for life.
Hey.
For life. Or death. Silence equals death. Come on.
Violence against lesbians and gays has increased every year since the start of the AIDS crisis. We still fear losing our jobs. We are denied places to live. We are here today to say enough is enough. We are ready to live as full and equal members of society. And we are ready to fight for our freedom.
So give me an L.
Now.
E.
E.
S.
Yes. Oh, yes. Hey, Deb. Lesbian. Lesbian. Can you show the whole screen? Yeah. No.
Yeah. All right. Happy Sunday.
Right here. Pin her. I'm gonna pin her.
This is a significant time in our community and our visibility as a movement.
So good to see you.
Hi, Cassandra.
So good to see you all. Much love.
Hi, Sheree.
Hey. Gotta go.
Hello, Joan. Hi.
You laid it down.
It is just like a moment.
Bye.
Hello, Amy. Celia never opened up.
Thank you all. We'll see you in a couple weeks.
Yes.
Great writing.
Thank you.
Thank you.